Marcus Meyer, and this is my call to action speech into my audience. What is the meaning of diplomacy? Its goal is to prevent extreme forms of violence and to enable normal communication between states, even in tough situations. So why did I bring this subject up of war and diplomacy? Because there are consequences when we use war compared to diplomatic actions in ways unimaginable. I'd like to show a few statistics. So, according to the Watson Institute of the Brown University, since 2001, a combined 370,000 people have died of all active duty members around the world. In addition, since 2001, we have seen the fertility rate rise over to 210,000 civilians and have seen 7.6 million refugees flee their home country from the war zone since 2001. In addition, we have totaled our cost of U.S. national debt of $4.4 trillion. This accounts of 1/4 of our U.S. national debt. So I chose this topic because we're living in an era where unity and civil liberties are called for. Are we going to further split ourselves from democracy due to radical beliefs and hatred of nations? Because at the end of the day, we live in one world, and this is the only place we got. As human beings, we have an extraordinary intelligence to resolve issues not with action and crime, but with words and diplomatic actions. Now, the main points I'd like to point out in this presentation are: first, does democracy function and its examples? Second, is war inevitable, or is it possible to completely abolish it from the human race? And third, what are the benefits of democracy? Now, we have seen democratic solutions work in the past, and I'd like to start with the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan, by almost any account, was a brilliant success. It jump-started the European economic recovery and demonstrated U.S. goodwill between its competing nations such as Germany. In addition, it stopped communism in the immediate aftermath of World War II. I would just like to show an image of what Berlin looked like after the war. The second example I'd like to show of democracy working is the non-proliferation regime. The non-proliferation regime was a major role in discouraging nations who had nuclear ambitions. Back in the 1960s, experts believed that there would be 40 plus nuclear weapons worldwide by the year 2000. However, thanks to the NPT, this is a big reason why it didn't happen. It waged peace between nations, and now only the United States, Russia, and China hold the most nuclear warheads in the world. Another democratic solution I'd like to show, just to exemplify that democratic solutions do work, is the opening to China in the Nixon era. So the opening to China basically calmed the long-lasting tensions between the U.S. and China. It was a major event in diplomacy and a smart geostrategic move on our part because it increased the external pressure on the Soviet Union and facilitated the U.S. exit from the Vietnam War and the conflict. So we got out with the diplomatic solutions and stopped the war earlier than we thought we could. The next point I would like to show is war actually inevitable, right? The answer is no. War is not inevitable. We have to see this realistically, in which groups or organizations will never reach diplomatic resolutions, such as the terrorist group ISIS. As a result, war and terrorism might always be around, and we have to be ready for that. I'm not saying that we should completely abolish the need for armies, but we do need to be smart on how we use them. Ultimately, we have to use our brave men and women to protect our home country and protect ourselves. Argument, however, is that between well-developed countries, war should not be an option because we have to find diplomatic solutions and not use force and violence as an answer. Now, the third point I'd like to point out a modern diplomatic solution which we have seen, and this is the Iran nuclear agreement. Now, the Iran nuclear agreement basically calmed the tensions between long-lasting fights and disagreements. And this agreement consisted of uranium or plutonium being blocked or small amounts being imported into this country, into the Iran country. As a result of this agreement, Iran will be under constant surveillance to be sure that Iran is not involving themselves with terrorist activities, and Iran will also be under constant surveillance to look at its progress in technologies and of its conventional weapons development. As a result, this just shows the magnitude in which agreements can be made between nations, and to satisfy countries' both needs, and as a result to calm these tensions and long-lasting fights, so we can get somewhere and without violence and without crime. So the next point I'd like to show is how to minimize war, and how basically the chance of war could be minimized for the future. And this is by uniting each other. So the agreement negotiated between the Secretary of State John Kerry and his Russian counterpart, Foreign Minister of Russia, stipulates that the government of President Bashar al-Assad, an array of rebel groups opposing it, which includes those backed by the United States and its allies, will stop fighting each other and unite to fight the enemy which is at hand, which would be ISIS. As a result, we should not be fighting one another. We should be uniting together to find the correct way to end this war and the correct way to end terrorism, to live a happier life and safer life. So I've illustrated the points to abolishing war, though what are the core benefits of actually not having war is a major factor. Well, as I stated in the beginning, the statistics, $4.4 trillion US could have been saved since 2001 and could have been spent on other causes or could have just been saved. In addition, 210,000 civilians should have stayed alive and had their life still. In addition, 7.6 million refugees would not have to flee their home country and have to start a new life in a new country and try to rebuild their family and their economic wealth. In addition, wars do not help the future. It's passed on through generations in which people perceive a country in a negative way, always having that tension and hatefulness against the people or culture. In addition, when the war is over, the infrastructure of countries will have to be rebuilt from ground zero to reassure the future for the country again. Just look at Al-Raqqa, Syria, and the development they have before them after this war is over. I'd like to show a picture of what Al-Raqqa looks like currently. This is Al-Raqqa, Syria, and this is what the development, the reprocess of the development. So in conclusion, war means learning to overcome the conditioned beliefs that armed forces is an acceptable way of dealing with disputes. It's a human weakness, not strength, to solve problems with cruelty, brutality, and murder. As a species, we have already matured enough for modern society to decide that wartime atrocities and crimes, people can be arrested for it, and that it is actually not the correct way to go about with issues, and not the correct way to resolve our problems that we face in the 21st century. We have to grow together as humanity and grow wise enough to solve our problems in another way and live a happier and safer life for our future. Thank you.